A trade war has begun. It is not between distant rivals. It is between two of the closest partners on Earth. The United States and Canada are now in a serious trade dispute. The fight started quietly. It began with new rules. It grew with new taxes. It now threatens a massive economic relationship. Consider this one number. In 2025, trade in goods and services between the two nations topped $900 billion. That is more than $2 billion crossing the border every single day. A small disruption here does not stay small for long. It sends ripples everywhere. This is a story about neighbors. The United States and Canada share the world's longest undefended border. They have built their economies together for generations. Cars, food, energy, people. For decades, this arrangement worked. It was built on trust and a massive rulebook called a trade agreement. But in early 2026, one roommate decided to change the locks. Now the other is threatening to change the Wi-Fi password. The dispute is not simple. It is a complex web of security concerns, political posturing, and economic anxiety. The United States fired the first shot. It announced new national security safeguards on select imports. These rules were not about tanks or spies. Circuit boards, specialty steel, agricultural technologies. The US claimed these imports created vulnerabilities in its supply chains. Canada, a key supplier of these goods, felt targeted. It called the move a protectionist tactic disguised as a security measure. The response from Ottawa was swift. It unveiled its own list of retaliatory tariffs on American goods, and the fight was on. There have been disputes over softwood, lumber, dairy, aluminum. So, who are the players in this drama? On one side, you have the United States. Think of it as the big brother in the relationship. It has a massive economy. It has a huge domestic market. It often sets the tone for global trade. The US government, in this scenario, is acting like a concerned homeowner. It is checking all the windows and doors. It is worried about who has a key to the house. The stated goal is to protect American jobs and secure vital supply chains. The government wants to make sure that the essential things the country needs, microchips, medical supplies, are made closer to home. On the other side, you have Canada. Think of Canada as the clever, resourceful sibling. Its economy is smaller, but it is deeply integrated with the US. It is not a distant supplier. It is part of the same factory floor. A Canadian company might make a car seat. That seat crosses the border to a factory in Michigan. It gets put into a car that is then sold back to a customer in Canada. Three big reasons push these friendly neighbors into a fight. Diagram. 3 arrows labeled politics, supply chain fears, and lobbying pointing to an explosion labeled trade dispute. The first and most powerful cause is domestic politics. In both Washington and Ottawa, leaders face pressure to look strong. Washington, Ottawa. Protecting local jobs is an easy way to score points with voters. After years of global uncertainty, there is a rising mood of America first and Canada first. A politician can stand at a podium and say, "I am defending our workers from unfair competition." It is a simple message that resonates with people who feel left behind by the global economy. Trade becomes a tool not just for economics, but for political theater. The second cause is a deep, lingering anxiety about supply chains. The COVID-19 pandemic was a global wake-up call. Suddenly, everyone realized that essential items were often made on the other side of the world. Face masks, computer chips. Countries felt vulnerable. You cannot afford to have critical goods stuck on a ship in a distant port. Governments now want to reshore or friendshore production. Reshore, friendshore, bringing manufacturing back home, only trading with trusted allies. The problem is, the definition of a trusted ally can change when politics get involved, as Canada is now discovering. The third cause is the quiet but constant pressure from industry lobbying. American steel producers, Canadian dairy farmers. When governments fight over trade, ordinary people and businesses feel the pain. There are 3 immediate risks that emerge from this Canada-US dispute. The first and most obvious risk is higher prices. A tariff is basically a tax on imported goods. That tax does not just disappear. The company that imports the product has to pay it. In most cases, they pass that cost on to the consumer. So, the new US tax on Canadian building materials means a new home in Arizona costs more to build. And the new Canadian tax on US appliances means a family in Vancouver pays more for a new washing machine. It is a hidden tax that shows up on every receipt. The second major risk is job losses. The North American economy is a deeply integrated machine. A single product like a car can have its parts cross the border up to 7 or 8 times before it is finished. If new tariffs and inspections slow down that process, the entire assembly line can grind to a halt. Factories in Michigan, factories in Missouri. That means workers lose hours. If the dispute drags on, those temporary cuts can become permanent layoffs. Small businesses that supply these larger factories are often the first and hardest hit. The third risk is a bit more subtle, but just as damaging. It is uncertainty. Business thrives on predictability. When you are planning to build a new factory, when you are planning to hire 100 new employees, you need to know what the rules will be next year. A trade war destroys that certainty. Companies do not know how much their parts will cost next month. They do not know if their biggest export market will suddenly be closed off. So, what do? They wait. They pause investments. They delay hiring. This creates a chill that spreads across the entire economy. It slows down growth and innovation, not because of any single tariff, but because no one knows what will happen next. These risks are not theoretical. They are happening right now in 2026. Businesses are scrambling to understand the new rules. Some are trying to find new suppliers. Others are trying to absorb the new costs. Families see grocery bills inch higher, and gas become less predictable. Dreams of a new car or a kitchen renovation get pushed into the future. She owns a small company in southern Ontario that makes high-tech sensors. For 10 years, her business has been a success story. She employs 40 people. Her biggest customer is a large medical device manufacturer based in Ohio. Her sensors are a critical component in their advanced diagnostic machines. Her team engineers the sensors, and they ship them across the border twice a week, just in time for the assembly line. Then the trade dispute began. Maria's sensors were not on the first list of tariffs, but they fell under the new national security safeguards. This meant every shipment now required a new set of forms. It also meant random inspections at the border, which could delay a truck for days. Suddenly, her just-in-time delivery system was broken. Her customer in Ohio started getting nervous. A delayed shipment of sensors meant their own multi-million-dollar production line had to stop. It was costing them a fortune. They were patient at first, but after the third delayed shipment in 2 months, they called Maria with bad news. The customer explained that they could no longer rely on her. The risk was too high. They had found a new supplier in Texas. It would cost them more, and the quality was not quite as good yet, but the supply chain was secure. It was all within the United States. Just like that, Maria lost 60% of her business. She had to have a town hall meeting with her employees. She explained the situation with a heavy heart. She told them she had to lay off 25 people. These were not just employees, they were her neighbors. Their kids played on the same soccer teams. She had attended their weddings. Maria's story is not unique. There are thousands of Marias on both sides of the border right now. There is the farmer in California who can no longer sell his lettuce. There is the trucking company owner in New Brunswick whose trucks are stuck for hours. These are the people who pay the price for trade wars. They are not politicians or lobbyists. They are just people who built a business based on a simple promise: that the world's friendliest border would remain open for business. Now that promise has been broken, and they are left to pick up the pieces. It's rough out there. When you turn on the news, you hear the loud voices, you hear the politicians defending their actions. But if you listen to the trade experts, the economists who study this for a living, you hear a much quieter and more worried tone. They are not focused on who is winning or losing today. They are focused on the long-term damage. One expert, a former trade negotiator, put it plainly in a recent interview.
This is not a soccer game where one team scores and the other team loses.
In a trade war between integrated economies, both sides limp off the field. The final score is always lose-lose. For example, when the US puts a tariff on Canadian steel, the goal is to help American steel mills. And maybe it does, for a little while. But that steel is a raw material. It is used to make cars, build bridges, and construct buildings. As the price of steel goes up, every American industry that uses steel becomes less competitive. A US car company now has to compete with a German or Japanese company, still using cheaper non-tariffed steel. So, you might save a few jobs in the steel industry, but you risk losing more jobs in the auto industry. Experts call this the downstream effect, and it is where the real economic damage happens. A recent study found that for every dollar raised by the new tariffs, American consumers and businesses were paying about $1.30 in higher costs and lost efficiency. The extra 30 cents gets burned up in paperwork, in shipping delays, in the time and money companies spend trying to find new suppliers. Trade barriers act like sand in the gears of the economy. Everything slows down, gets hotter, and is more likely to break. Ultimately, the experts warn that the biggest cost is not measured in dollars. It is the erosion of trust. The relationship was built on decades of certainty. When that trust is gone, it is very hard to get back. Even if this dispute ends tomorrow, businesses will be hesitant. A trade dispute can start like a flash fire, with angry headlines and swift tariffs. But its true danger lies in how it can turn into a slow, grinding burn that reshapes the entire economic landscape. The immediate effects, like higher prices, are just the beginning. One of the first things to change is investment patterns. Announcements from international firms re-evaluating North American expansion plans cite trade policy uncertainty. North America, once seen as a stable and predictable bloc, is now viewed as fractured. Permanent restructuring follows. They are not going back to Maria, they have already invested to switch. This is called decoupling. It is like taking a perfectly good car, taking it apart, and trying to build two smaller, less effective cars from the pieces. When the economic relationship becomes adversarial, bitterness spills over into other areas of cooperation. A fight over aluminum can make it harder to solve the big problems. The slow burn can leave deep scars for a generation. This trade war does not have to be a runaway train. There are off-ramps. Direct negotiation, away from cameras, fine compromises, targeted exemptions, and stricter verifications. Neutral third party, USMCA panels can provide rules-based decisions, manage cooperation, build a truly secure, integrated North American supply chain, joint investments, shared standards, coordinated strategy. Instead of building two separate fortresses, build one bigger, stronger one. If none are taken, the conflict simmers, trade continues, but less efficiently and at higher cost, a sad, managed decline. As we stand in the middle of 2026, the trade relationship between the United States and Canada is at a crossroads. The headlines are sharp, the data is worrying, the human cost is real. This is not a distant geopolitical game. It is a conflict that affects factory workers, farmers, families. The path forward is not yet written. We can see four possible futures, four potential outcomes of this dispute. First, a quick resolution. Leaders recognize the mutual damage. They de-escalate through negotiation, diplomacy, exemptions, and clear rules. Trust is restored. Trade flows return to normal. Second, a prolonged stalemate. The conflict does not escalate, but becomes an uncomfortable normal. Businesses adapt. Supply chains reroute. Growth slows. Third, escalation. Tariffs and counter-tariffs spin out of control, reaching more sectors, leading to recession and lasting damage to the alliance. Fourth, strategic decoupling. Both countries reduce reliance on each other. The fight is quieter, but North America becomes poorer, less efficient, and more disconnected. Which future comes to pass depends on choices in the coming months. Whether leaders prioritize long-term prosperity over short-term wins, and whether the quiet voices of experts and business owners can be heard over political theater. The story of this trade dispute is still being written. The relationship between these two great neighbors is being tested like never before. For now, the best path forward is one of calm negotiation and a shared focus on the people this trade is meant to serve. In a nervous world, how much can you really trust your closest friend? The answer will define the next chapter of their relationship. The trade war of 2026 has begun. What happens next is up to all of us.